very first thing I did when I came through the front door was I sat down with the leadership and understood what were the different initiatives that were happening on the ground and figure out how can we take this and apply it to another country.
Welcome back, everybody. Rich Brubaker, founder of Collective Responsibility, here today with another episode of Sustainable Ambassador Podcast. Through this podcast, I'm engaging with corporate sustainability professionals, government leaders, nonprofit leaders, academics about the work they're doing to solve some of the greatest challenges that we're facing. For me, this is about inspiring the next generation of ambassadors to figure out, one, what can they do? Two, what's the career path? And three, what's the impact that they can be having through this journey? Today, I'm extremely excited to be joined by a really good friend, Laura Magill, who is the global head of sustainability at Bata. She's Bata's first global head of sustainability, responsible for executing the overall strategy and integration of positive social and environmental impacts across the brand's value chain. But she has more than 20 years of experience in Asia working across the global supply chain industries on sustainability, driving innovative solutions while mitigating risk and ensuring kind of bottom line results. She has been someone on the ground in the value chain, working with the people, trying to understand, identify, and deliver on a range of solutions. So Laura, thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for taking the time to join us from Singapore. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Richard. I'm excited to be here. It's always lovely to see you.
All right. As a starting point, it'd be great to hear a personal introduction, a little about yourself and the work that you're doing.
Excellent, Richard. So I'm Laura. I'm the global head of sustainability at Bata. I'm based in Singapore. Bata is a global footwear company. We operate in 71 countries around the world. We have our own manufacturing units besides our retail stores, and we own several of our own brands as well. Over the last 20 years or so, I've been based here in Asia, working with various multi-stakeholder organizations, as well as different brands and retailers in the space of sustainability. I started my career working for an international NGO based in mainland China. I was going to rural villages doing the program monitoring and evaluation for the bilateral and multilateral funders at that time.
What are you currently doing? Like you're the global sustainability for Bata. What's the role? What do you do in that seat?
So I've just completed mobilizing my team across all 5 regions. In terms of topics that I'm working on, social responsibility, workplace health and safety, sustainable product, and around the eco-friendly product, and also around the safe product, and various environmental. And in my job, I'm trying to roll out a level of global governance. I'm a global function, while keeping in mind the local context in which we're operating.
With 5 regions, you have a really wide band of probably standards, cultures, applications, business environments. Like, what's the balance or what's the challenge of being a global brand, but being someone in the field and trying to kind of not just navigate that, but also translate that back to headquarters about how to create priorities and how to take action?
The biggest challenge is getting everybody onto the same page, understanding that there are different cultural contexts that come into play, the way that people think and the thinking process, which is great. I mean, that's part of the best thing about being in sustainability. But then bringing that up into the boardroom to be able to talk the business language and turning it into the business language is not only a feel-good factor and a must-do, but highlighting the business case on why we must be doing it in the benefit, basically the return on investment for the business. And sometimes that return on investment can't be shown in a CapEx, OpEx model. It takes time.
So speaking of like the business case, what's the easier way to frame sometimes? Is it risk and regulation, like you have to do this, you don't have a choice? Or is it, hey, leadership opportunity, innovation? Like what have you found works the best? And as a sustainability professional, which one do you lean on a little bit more? Is it just timing? Like what's the difference?
So I like to take it from a perspective of first understanding where somebody's interest and passion is, and then really highlighting to them, what are the compliance stages, and then what the innovation of that looks like over time. Everybody wants a solution. They don't understand, or you have to bring them along the journey of the process. You can't go from a compliance level to an innovation overnight. There's a journey along the way, and there are certain key steps and critical points on that journey.
How do you, as a professional, approach creating a framework, prioritization, and driving action?
We very much operate off a matrix organization. So that does help as well, because we have somebody who's responsible for a various project and/or initiative that we're trying to drive at a global level, and then pick that up at a regional and local level. So for example, I have a team member based in China, and she's responsible for all our social and environmental responsibility initiatives around the world. She leads all the projects around that. She leads the governance around that, and she's supporting the other regional heads in the implementation of that in all those conversations. So they have an area that they specialize in, but then they're also picking up the other topics, because you can't expect one person working in sustainability to be very technical on all topics. And you really have to play into each individual team member's strength.
When you're hiring people, what is it that you're looking for? Because, like, to your point, like, one person can't do it all, and you were doing it all until you actually had all these people in place, and now they're bringing things in. So what is it that they bring in that you couldn't do on your own? Like, how do you approach hiring or creating a framework or a structure that allow you to do your job?
One of the best things about sustainability is that it's so diverse, and we need so many different skill sets to make an impact. So everybody in my team has a different strength that they bring along with them. For me, when I'm really looking at thought process, risk-based understanding basically where risks sit. You may not have a lot of experience in risk, but having that risk-based mindset in questions, having an inquisitive mind, and just curious about things and wanting to go out and learn, and being willing to make mistakes, and it's learning from that, and then progressing forward to make a bigger impact, and progressing forward to make the next biggest impact.
How does having this group of directors and managers underneath you now help you refine that? Because as an individual building the team, you probably have your own ideas. You're probably hearing about EU regulations and financing. Like, you have your own framework and you can engage on. But now you have like these local presences, these very technical people. How does that help you adjust your own strategy, your own programming, or the lens that you look through things?
Yeah, we have to be quite agile. So now that everybody's in place and we're moving forward, we think that we already have the solution when they're in place. But when they're in place and they're on the ground and they're having the conversation, we actually find out more that, oh, we didn't consider this aspect, or there's other things we need to consider. So we do have some key priorities and key goals on that. But right now, in terms of the larger plan, we have the outline and the framework, or also known as the roadmap, for the direction of sustainability. But at this stage, 2 years into the organization, we're still going along that journey and refining it. It's not a perfect roadmap, and we're learning as we go, but that's fine, because we're all learning from each other, even within our own organization, and also from our external partners as well.
So speaking of the last 2 years, what are like the big pieces of work that you had to do coming in? What were the things that you were looking at and trying to understand so you could create this framework for the first 2 years, so you could then hire the people, so you could then make progress over, say, the next 5, 10, 15 years?
So every country across our organization have been doing various initiatives, but they've been within those countries. So the very first thing I did when I came through the front door at Bata was I sat down with the leadership and understood what were the different initiatives that were happening on the ground, and start to figure out, how can we take this initiative that has worked so well for a number of years in this country and apply it to another country? Is it relevant to another country somewhere else? And take that learning and amplify it and put that initiative in place. So, perfect example I'll share with you. I had a great conversation with our Pakistan country manager about energy management and water management and solar, our very first conversation. He was telling me, oh, we've been doing this for a number of years. I shall introduce you. And he made the introduction to our team member who was responsible for putting that in place and rolling it out. It's been going on upwards to 6, maybe 8 years as of today. Now, from that engagement, we have now taken on the initiative to put energy sensors on various machines in selected factories. So going to the next level, amplifying that initiative in other areas and learning from it as part of our energy management initiative.
What was driving those countries or those individuals? Were they just driven on their individual professional passion, or was it just, this regulation in Peru and that regulation in Kenya? Like, what did you find was driving people? And once you started to identify them, how much more were you able to find? Like, are you talking about like dozens of opportunities that you're just trying to figure out how to bring them all together, or was it just a few things here and there, and then you had to use those to drive more forward?
We often see, or I'm seeing in our organization, quite frankly, it's a mixture of both. Of course, you want to be compliant, so there is always a reactive to become compliant, and let's do something now because we want to be in compliance. We don't want to, but then once that compliance has been addressed, it's how do we move this forward, and we also want to continue to make it cost effective, and then how do we learn from it? Once that country or that local initiative has been learned from, then do you bring it up to a regional level, or do you try it on a smaller scale, maybe in another region, and amplify it from there?
You almost have all these pilots kind of ready to go.
It's amazing how many ideas everybody has, and really solid ideas with solid solutions that we can be doing. I always believe in, I just feel like, wow, there's just so much to do. I go to work every day and I think about a new idea, or I learn about the successes of something that's already being rolled out. So it's really exciting.
So if you think about a couple of these ideas, like what are some of the attributes or things that you're like, oh, this one is something that I can take this to global scale immediately? And what are some of the things you're like, no, that one's just too local, too unique. It's great, but it can't go any further.
So, for example, we have 2 factories in Bangladesh. We have 1 factory in Kenya. We have 3 factories in India. Those regional heads will have a conversation and socialize an idea with each other. And then they'll even bring in the peers. So oftentimes it's like our engineering teams on the ground and maybe the production manager, and they're saying, can we do this? These are the things we need to be thinking about. And then from there, it goes to become an initiative, particularly with some of the energy sensors that we're working on across different factories that we have in our network.
Now, we've talked a lot about what's going well. When it comes to resistance to some of this stuff, who are, traditionally speaking, doesn't be at Bata necessarily, but who are traditionally the stakeholders that offer the most resistance, and what's behind that?
I think the resistance comes from not because of the lack of interest, and there's just not enough time. There are priorities that people have been given or the business has been given, and that's the focus, and there's a reason for that. And those priorities constantly have been reviewed. And when you think about time, you need time to absorb and learn. You need time to then put that initiative in place. So time is probably the biggest hindrance to getting things to move forward. There's just not enough of it.
But also, is time in sense of, look, this is a long-term problem and we have short-term goals. Is time in that sense also sometimes working against you?
Absolutely, and how we move that forward and get the initiative. And that's really where our exco and our CEO and our board really carry the flag and the torch on. So even throughout the year, like every organization, we're giving our OKRs or our performance indicators. However, sometimes throughout the year, we have to stop and review that because something has come up to make something else a higher priority than what's on our written document for a performance indicator.
Outside the organization, like how do you view kind of peer collaboration, peer benchmarking as part of this process?
I feel that anybody working in sustainability needs to have some level of collaboration, whether it be a public collaboration that is quite publicized or whether it's a closed door conversation. That's how the needle is being moved forward. At Bata, we're doing a bit of both. Bata, we're now members of the leather working group and really working with our tanneries within our own operations as well as the ones that we source from. To work on the issues within tannery. We are also looking at other partners around other environmental issues as well other issues within the supply chain. That's either happening on a global level and also within a regional local level. So those collaborations are really key to the organization. When we look to partner, benchmark, either ourselves with other organizations, we take it as a learning, understand maybe directly from that organization what worked for them, and even what were the lessons learned. If they had to do something and look at it a bit differently from the beginning or in the middle, what was that? So we can almost leapfrog and come over some of and take and absorb and apply any lessons if we are to go forward with that.
I guess, it also goes back down to like, what's the role of business to actually solve these problems that we face? Like, if you think about all the challenges we face with, say, plastic or carbon or, how much of it is the responsibility of business to solve those issues? How much of it is to participate proactively to solve what's in your own house. Like, how do you view that relationship after so many years in this space now?
But I firmly believe we need to practice what we preach, put it in place first in-house, learn from it, and then we can start to engage the government and other multi-stakeholder organizations to see if there's opportunities in either further legal enforcement or putting in legislation around that. And then working with from there, that allows for larger businesses to work with smaller SMEs to really drive and make an impact, because not everybody is going to have the resources to be able to bring everything together.
But we're facing some really big challenges, Laura. Like we're looking at, I mean, in our region alone, we're already 2.5, 3 degrees higher than pre-industrial levels. We're looking at labor shifts that are, monumental, from the rural to the urban, aging, all kinds of things are impacting us. How has your view of what's happening in-house changed as we're getting warmer, as labor shifts are happening? Like, there's a lot of real big megatrends these days. And does it create a higher sense of urgency to get things done?
Well, we definitely need to make more progress, and there's a lot that needs to be done. However, one of the biggest things is we don't have a lot of the systems and processes in place across all organizations. You can have a people resource and then a time resource. Then you start to fall into, what is that workflow? What is that system? What is that governance around that? How are you assessing and measuring? Because how one organization or how one external assessing party will go around and verify or sign off to say, yep, this is the right way or this is the wrong way. That whole governance in being able to measure really varies from organization to organization, as well from verification body to verification body, from government to government. And until we start to have an increased alignment on what that language is and what those measurements are and how we're going to benchmark ourselves, the scope of what we're going to be measuring and how we're going to achieve that. And one of the other things as well is, a lot of people ask me about sustainability. Oh, I'm not technical enough. Oh, I don't know enough. To work in this space, you also don't need to know everything. Somebody like myself is a bit more of a generalist. I have maybe one or two areas that I'm very comfortable to speak about, such as environmental issues and social human rights issues. I rely on more technical people to support those initiatives, and people that are a bit more in the thick of it to support that. So it's quite a large area, but we need to be bringing the message forward. But how we're going to do that is we have to learn, we have to share, we have to be benchmarking ourselves against each other as well as ourselves.
So what do you think are the skills or the tool sets you think are required to be successful for an in-house sustainability professional?
Not just accepting what's being told, saying, okay, what's next? How do I move this forward? And then also knowing equally when to draw the line. Sometimes, you don't want to be bombarding people with questions, but you should also be ready to provide some recommendations, ideas, and solutions to be able to contribute to that innovation and that impact to bring things forward. People that work in this space, from my observation, are coming from a variety of different backgrounds, are quite eclectic, quite well read. But one of the common things is people connect other people to other people.
What's the role of passion in your work?
Great question. I really feel at Bata I'm able to be my authentic self. And really, the days where I need to be an activist and really super vocal, and then there are days where I really need to crunch and make the business case and see how it's going to impact the bottom line. For me, that's a split, and that again is going back to when people ask me about sustainability, identifying their passion, but also to get people's buy-in, there are also different triggers, and you have to understand that. And some people are motivated by that passionate activist, laying the bigger picture, and then how, we need their assistance to get there. And some require more concrete, firm evidence. I'm able to go between, depending on who I'm working with across the organization or even in the field. That for me is extremely important.
Well, actually, you mentioned the field. Can you talk a little about the importance of being out in the field, and maybe even in your earlier experiences, like how important was it be to be out of the corporate office, be out of offices in general, and see what was happening in factories and supply chains?
Even if you don't start in the field and you start in the office, take yourself out of that office situation and go into the field. My career, I was in the field. As I shared earlier, I did program monitoring and evaluation on site in various provinces in northern China, as well as working based out of Beijing and Hong Kong. Then when I moved to supply chain, I had the great opportunity to go and work, be on site at various factories, and really not only learn directly from the factory owners, but the various levels of their management team as well as their production teams. I make it a point when I do travel to still go out to the factories, to go out to our supply chain, to meet our supply chain partners, but even more importantly, to meet the workers and the management that make that product happen for us, because they're there every day and they're seeing it. They're some of the best eyes and ears on the ground, and they have some really great thoughts and ideas on how to get things done, but they just don't have the ability to carry it forward. That on the ground field experience is a great experience to have, and really seeing where the bigger picture work that we're working on has impact, direct impact.
So if you think about, say, the global conversations around sustainability, and then you marry that to what you see on the ground, what do you wish that people not on the ground understood about what's actually happening in supply chains in developing nations?
There's a knowledge gap. And I'm not talking about formal education, informal education on the technical. How do I make something happen? What resources do I need? Is it investment, or is it just a behavioral shift that needs to happen? And that's really where I think a lot of people, when we're sitting in the office and we're sitting around board tables and so forth in different forums, that we forget about the grassroots, and that's really where things are going to happen and have an impact. I remember when I first was working in North China doing program monitoring and evaluation on straw bale, they wanted to bring a straw bale in from outside of China, but the cost to do that was over the top. And they were very innovative, the local community. So they didn't have the steel that they needed to make this big fancy machine, but they were able to make something similar that worked just as well on the materials that they had, which was really just wood and maybe some local scrap aluminum and stuff. So we have to be quite open to those type of grassroots innovation, filling in that knowledge gap through informal education and even discussions.
Speaking of formal education, what has the role of formal education been for you? And are there any degrees or certifications that you think recently are really useful or required as you're going forward?
So for me, one of the things that I'm really looking at right now is sustainability reporting and what I need to do to mobilize an organization around that. So that's something that for me right now is top of mind. In terms of others, another area where I look for others to support is really around eco-friendly product and how we define our sustainable product and bringing that into the organization. Whilst I have some experience on that, I'm not a product person. I'm not a materials person. I'm not a product developer. So incorporating them and their learnings and any certificates that they may have or education as well into that discussion and into my own learnings.
So, final question. What advice would you give to someone who's, 22, looking out in the world, thinking corporate is the medium of choice for me when it comes to addressing sustainability as a topic? What advice would you give to them to get started in their career, to advance in their career, to kind of plan what their future should be from the first ground, like from their first step, hopefully into the field, to the corporate global sustainability officer position?
We have a great tool today, LinkedIn. It wasn't around when I was starting, but it's a great tool to be able just to follow people and understand what they're reading or posting. X, formerly known as Twitter, is another great tool. And then there's local and regional social media platforms available to that. I think also getting practical experience while you're doing your education, whether it be a virtual internship or doing something in terms of experiential learning and working with organizations or NGOs. I think that these are two of the big things. And the best place to always start is within your own organization.